Hello and welcome to episode 72 of the Ski Instructor Podcast. My name is Dave Burrows and I'm the director and owner of SnowPro Ski School based here in Valdillier in Switzerland. I hope that you are all well and I'm very sorry for the slight delay. Normally I try to publish these podcasts on about a month-to-month basis, but it's just been so busy here this season that this one has slipped a little bit. So I'm about a week behind my usual publishing schedule. This is really the first quiet week that we've had all winter. It's been an absolutely incredible winter here. And then subsequently, all of the podcasts that I've published this winter have just been kind of rushed out. Haven't really had much time, including this one, to sit down and really edit them properly and also do proper introduction, all of that sort of stuff. It's I'm doing the best I can, but the ski school's just been nuts this winter, and that's a good thing. Everyone has been busy actually, which is nice to see. All of the shops, all the restaurants, everyone that I speak to has had a really good winter, and that is that's a really good thing. Everyone's having a chance to kind of make the money back a little bit from the days of COVID times and various other warm winters where tourism hasn't been quite so strong. So it's been absolutely brilliant. The atmosphere on the mountain's been good, and it's been a very lovely winter so far. Not over yet, of course. This week is a bit quiet, and then it goes busy for us again for another 2 or 3 weeks, and then I think it might start to die away. But yeah, still plenty of skiing to do, plenty of turns. The snow coverage up top is very good. Conditions this season have been absolutely brilliant. It's been cold up high, which I think has been the biggest difference this winter. So the snow that has come has stayed, and it's been a lovely winter. Lots of really nice turns and beautiful surfaces to ski on. So yeah, it's been very good. From a personal perspective, I'm if I say so myself, I'm skiing pretty well. I'm skiing probably as well as I have done for a number of years. Finally found a boot and ski setup that I really like. Got all my movements in the right place, and I worked on a couple of key things that have really worked for me, which probably will get expanded upon in future podcasts, depending on who I'm speaking to. So you'll hear some of that over the summer. I haven't done much other than alpine ski this winter since probably October or something. I first got my skis on this year, and just been skiing non-stop since then, working in a really nice movement pattern that really works for me and the capabilities of my body these days, which is excellent. This episode 72, is a slight departure from normal. It features Alec and Max Allcock, who run another podcast called the Snowboard Instructor Podcast. And these guys, I think, were originally snowboarders, but this also fits in with the themes that you might see coming up in a couple of episodes, where I want to interview also two specific types of people. So people that were in the ski industry or ski instructors or skiing at a very high level and have subsequently got out and gone on to something else. That's a theme that I'm interested to get a perspective on, and I've got a couple of those lined up, which I'm very much looking forward to doing those interviews. And I'm also retouching with this particular episode, which is going to be with a couple of guys who are kind of working their way through the system or doing skiing as alongside something else that they do. So it's not their kind of full-time gig. I think what we get on this podcast a lot is sort of fully qualified or full cert instructors who are doing this year round for a living, but we don't really get that other perspective of people who have kind of done it and got out, and also people that are working their way through the system. I haven't done many of those, and I think I'd like to do a few more of those. So I've got a few ideas on my scrappy bit of paper list of people that I'd like to interview. And hopefully you will see a few of those coming up as well, because I think that's an important perspective that we get, rather than just the perspective of, people that have kind of seen it all and done it all. So as I recorded this interview, so Max works, I think he's a sound engineer or something like that. And he works, skiing is his kind of side thing that he does alongside. He works a lot in the UK, and Alec was skiing around. Last time I saw him was skiing around and training in the Porte du Soleil. I would have had him as an instructor, but it kind of Brexit got the better of him. Otherwise, he would definitely be on my team already. And he was or is currently still in New Zealand, living there and teaching there. And I think he just finished the New Zealand season when we recorded this. So interesting perspectives here. I've split this episode was a weird length, so I've kind of split it into 2 short episodes. So that's what you're going to get, and these are only about an hour long. They're not the usual mega long conversations that I've been recording lately. So a couple of short ones coming up. Got some other ones to edit, and then a huge list of people that I'd love to get in touch with and speak to this summer, and I need to get on with that. So enjoy. Here is episode 72, and we start off chatting about people that we know, mutual connections, and how that works within the ski industry. So enjoy the episode, and I'll see you on the next one.
No, I'm all good. My end. So like, using's pretty chill. Season's over. My boss was Chloe McFadden, who you done a thing with.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like the first time I met him. I mentioned you, and I was like, oh yeah, I know Dave, and yeah, he asked if I wanted a part-time job in, and I was like, yeah, go on.
It's all about
really, really well.
It's all about the connections, fellas. It's all about the connections. It's all about who you know, whether they made it onto the Ski Instructor Podcast, and then next thing you know, you got the job that you want.
That was great. It's like it's the same in the film industry as well. Like, it's just who you know, and then you just kind of work from there, right? And it's so funny when it's like it's such a small world, even in the film industry at this point. Like, I'm going to like network events or I'm doing shoots, and I'm just like, you're on the same fucking crew as I am, and it's like it's such a great like first day when you're doing it, and it's super cool. Like, then you just got the best team ever, and you know you can work really well with those people. But if you fuck up, everyone's going to know in the industry, and it's not going to be talked about. It's going to be talked about everywhere, and it's just like another level, and you just fucked basically.
Well, I don't know. I think life is increasingly about. I don't want to sit here and be like the old man who knows everything, but
No.
that does seem to be. It's certainly how it works out here in the mountains, right? So, you know, when you're out here, it's the first thing when you have a conversation with someone in Switzerland. The first thing you have to go through all this rigmarole about who you know, and like what they're up to, and all of this sort of stuff. And if you don't know the right, you eventually you'll find someone that you kind of commonly know, and then they're all right with you. And yeah, I suppose that applies professionally as well. The only difference is that where you guys live, well, not where you live now, Alec, but in the UK there's like 70 million people, right? So the chances of you knowing someone locally is probably less, because you don't have that sort of sense of community anymore. But certainly in a professional environment, if you've been hanging around doing what you've been doing for quite some time, you're bound to know someone, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's, I think, all in the industry, for sure. Like, snow sports, as you know, it's a very small world. And even in the film industry, it's the kind of same. Like, you just get people you know from different walks of life, from like London. It's still massive crews. But you're bound to just work with someone you've known, who you've like worked in the same department, or in the same kind of just set or wherever. It's all the same at that point. More so snow sports, more so snowboarding as well, specifically. It's like everyone's just like a big gang. It's like it's not even a community at that point. It's just a small gang because of how small snowboarding is. It's ridiculous.
Oh, mate. Like, New Zealand's mad because obviously everyone from the Northern Hemisphere comes around to do their ski season here, and it's like it's not just like the NZ system. You've got Cassie, you've got the Basie, and everyone like sort of knows each other. Just kind of super mad. But I remember setting up a guy's board. He was going split boarding, and we were like chatting about all different stuff. And then, funny enough, your podcast came up in the conversation of like, oh yeah, I've listened to the Ski Instructor Podcast. I'm like, yeah, he's fucking sick, isn't he? And then chatting to like people who me and Max has had on, like Mel, who does a lot in here on the Canadian system, as well as like a lot of like Basie instructors as well, like Dave Crazier, or the Real Lot, or even like Ash, he's like a big scene in the snowboarding scene in Basie. But then it's same thing goes down to all skiing as well. Like, it all crosses over from there, and like you just tend to just keep chatting about how you know these people, and you're like, you've never met this person in your life. But yeah,
it's from a professional perspective as well. It's also a really easy way to build rapport with people that you haven't met before quite quickly. There's certain things that work really well. It's like location, occasion, and kind of mutual people you know. The other one that works really well from a psychological perspective is like shared childhood experiences, weirdly. So if you want to make a really quick connection with people, it's like, okay, we're here at an event, I met you, or I'm here on this set or location or wherever I am. We talk about that. So, oh yeah, okay, I've been here before and all that sort of stuff. Then you might get onto who you know. But yeah, if you want to build a really quick and deep one, it's like things that if you're a similar age, it's like things you knew growing up is a really, it's a really amazing way to build a connection with people really quickly. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like I remember watching He-Man when I was a kid. You guys see, that doesn't work for you because you're older than me. I don't know what He-Man is.
I know He-Man.
Oh, okay, all right. Anyway, it's not the topic of this podcast, He-Man. What I wanted, so I've already started recording. We may or may not include the preamble in that, but why I wanted to speak to you, because I think you guys are in a really interesting place. But what I tend to interview all the time is like people at the say top of their profession, like full cert people, or people that are own their own company or whatever. And whilst that's interesting, you get a lot of the same perspectives. And the ones that I've been really trying to get in recent years is people kind of on their way through the system. I've tried that a couple of times before, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's worked out brilliantly, but I think it will with you guys, because you've got a couple of really interesting perspectives that I'm interested in. One of which is Alec, you've been doing a lot of skiing, and I probably should go a little bit like one step backwards as well to say that you guys are doing the Snowboard Instructor Podcast. That's right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and so super interesting. I listen to it all the time. Loads of great perspectives on that. It's absolutely amazing. But I know that you've been doing a lot of skiing, Alec. I've sort of seen you on skis the last couple of seasons. I know, Max, you're doing some stuff in the snow domes, but I think what you're doing is like snowboarding indoors. Is that?
Yeah, it's all kind of more snowboarding, race coaching.
Yeah.
Very similar to that, but yeah.
So I want to cover like what life's like for a sort of a day-to-day, person on their way through the system. That's kind of what I'd really like to get into. But maybe first you can kind of give me a bit of a background for you both. So like what you're up to, where you are, like where you are, what you're up to, what you're doing, and then we can carry on and get like in a bit more detail. If that works for you.
Yeah.
I don't know who wants
Works
to.
perfectly.
You go first, Max.
Yeah, so I started snowboarding with Alec at the Snow Dome in Tamworth. We never came from like a snow background. Like it was never a thing on our cards. We never thought about it when we were growing up. It was mainly kind of like your classic UK sports you would do. So like football and rugby and, those kind of stuff. And we had our dad take us to rugby every week, absolutely getting slaughtered by the mud and different other kind of teams that were playing. But we just played for the local town. And it worked really well. And like we started to kind of like, enjoy those things. But then, as you grow by, you kind of like start to try and find new interests, trying to find different stuff you wanted to. Mm-hmm. So then, especially when me and Alec were 16, we were like, when you hit 16, you try and get your first job. That's kind of like where it was in our age range. And the first job, one of the first jobs we looked at was at the Snow Dome. And that was like a ski and rental kind of technician, essentially. So it was basically the first kind of job you get where you're handing out skis, you're looking after the slope, you're sorting out customers with what they have. And it was very much that. That was our first kind of like entrance into that kind of world, And yeah, snow domes are definitely more different than resorts for sure. But, that's how we kind of started to gain to get into that world. Our dad didn't ski, our mom didn't ski. So we kind of came in from a perspective of like 17, 18 years old and like just this whole new world of like something that we never thought of doing. So we got into the industry through that in terms of just serving skis for like a year or two. Then we saw like the benefits you get is like you do a lesson. Mm-hmm. So you start doing your lessons, you start kind of like working with an instructor there, doing your ski, doing your snowboard, kind of getting the rough hang of it. You carry it on and just, I think the one thing that was really good about the Snow Dome was it's like 5 minutes from us in terms of drive. So it was very much like you could just go there anytime you want from like 9 p.m. till 10 p.m. Well, 9 a.m. till 10 p.m., sorry. And you could just go there, you could just ski and snowboard as much as you want. So you could get a lot of like mileage in it all year round, and it was perfect for us, especially when you started off. You could just build up, start meeting new people, new customers, new friends. And you just kind of just got better at your tech. And there was like one point, I think Alex the same, where it was very much like, I'm really enjoying this. I'm getting to a point where I could probably do something with this. And you see these people who are instructing. So then you start asking those questions and being like, right, how do I become an instructor? How do I get better? And then, a lot of them pointing towards the British Association at the time, which was the easiest kind of way to go, as it was very accessible and they had courses on at the Dome all the time. Mm-hmm. So it didn't really matter that you're never going to miss a course, which was great. So then you just start your level 1. And then it was like, cool, starting my level 1, did the tech, did the teach. And then, you kind of work from there. You get a job as a snowboarder ski instructor. And then it was very much like you're straight into the deep end with, beginner lesson after beginner lesson after beginner lesson, and like just that rotary kind of factory works. Yeah. And it's really good to like put you as a good instructor, because you're just having to hammer in all these lessons for such like a short amount of time in between. And then, you're doing all these days, but you just get better. You make mistakes, you learn new stuff. And it was that kind of process essentially. So starting as a level 1, then making your way, starting to think about those other, levels, level 2 and level 3. But yeah, that's kind of like how it started off. And I can get more into like the process of the system as it is. But yeah, it was very much like you learned a lot, and you had a lot of like different people, especially from walks of life. When you go to resorts, you definitely get a lot more people who are doing it full time. Whereas in the domes and the dry slopes, you get a lot of people who are doing it very part time. You get people who have 2 jobs and they're just getting it for extra money, or they're using it for like the free slope pass. So you can kind of see different ways of them teaching, because a lot of the time they're using their own kind of personalities from their second job and their own kind of theories from their second job to implement in their own instructing. And it's quite interesting to see how they work themselves in that, and how they teach, whether that is through whatever system used. And you kind of just watch that. You kind of there waiting for how they work, how they I've lost my train of thought.
No,
How they work.
Tell me more about that, because I didn't expect to get a tangent in like about 30 minutes in, but that is super interesting to me, because when you see people teaching out here, ski teaching is like their main gig, right? And so they wouldn't necessarily have another perspective from another job that they do. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what? Give me an example without,
I think it's very much like, job-wise, you could definitely see it. Like, if you have someone who, I think we had a guy who was, you saw like a car engineer, for example, kind of very methodical in terms of how he did stuff.
Yeah.
And you could kind of see that with his teaching. He was very kind of like step by step, not necessarily like this is how you do it, but it was very much like, right, it has to be done in this set. Here's the way it did it. It kind of felt like you could just read it off a sheet of paper, essentially. And it worked for like beginner lessons for sure. But then you get like people who are like surf instructors, or like, they've come from a background where it's a bit more creative. It's a bit more kind of different. So you can definitely see how they're way more looser for sure. And you kind of see they're a bit more forgiving with how people ride, or they're very kind of alternate thinking in a way. They're like, maybe try it this way. They're very kind of promote that. I feel like they promote that like alternate thinking a lot more. It's not as structured. I'm definitely probably, when I started off, more, I did this system, so I was kind of focusing on that system. But then, the more you do it, the more movement patterns you try, and you can kind of relate that to customers quite easily. But yeah, I found it quite interesting for sure. Even like when it came down to like age range as well, like, and how people, how people think is completely different as well. And you kind of see how they teach with that. Sometimes you can kind of guess what they kind of do for a job as well. Like, even before they even say it, just in terms of how they speak and what they do. But yeah, it's really interesting, and it works in some ways, but sometimes it doesn't. Like for the engineering stuff, I think it was very much like, right, this is how I do it. I don't really do it any other way apart from this. And it was for some people, but then you get a couple of customers who are like, I just don't get it. Like, I need some sort of other way of kind of looking at it. And you can kind of see them struggling at that, and then trying to figure out other stuff. But the main thing was our like local group that we had, even though we all come from different walks of life and had different stuff, we were all quite open-minded. And we were very much like, all right, this is how we can do it, but this is another way we can do it. And luckily, we had a lot of other people from different associations. So even though it was predominantly like Basie themed in these places, we still had people from the Cassie Association or the Canadian Association, the odd Snowsports England one, a couple of like Irish associations. So it was very interesting. Like you had this like melting pot of like ideas, not just from like the association background, but very much how people thought, especially in their walks of life, not just from like the on the slope, but coming off the slope and having those conversations. And essentially having a drink with them after and just talking about their lessons, and then them getting through like what they want to change or like how they teach, and you can kind of see that in terms of those conversations you have with them at the end of the day, for sure.
All right, cool. And so, Alec, I find you in New Zealand. What are you doing there? Like, what did you go down there for? You're not coming back either, are you? You're not coming back for a while.
He's gone.
Well, like we were doing, obviously, because I met you in Morzine or Morjan in Port Soleil. My partner was originally like, "Oh, we'll go to New Zealand because I just want to go there, and you don't have a choice in the matter." So I was like, "All right, cool. We'll do a winter season over there." And my first gig was like, it was kind of weird because I was like, "Oh, I can do a bit of instructing." Like full time, but they never got back to me in last season, and which was a bit annoying. So I ended up doing rentals back into it because the guy who I ended up knowing, Jim Hemingway, was like, "Yeah, we'll get you a job," and he's like from the West Midlands. He's now lives over here, and that got me really into the sort of ski snowboard tech side of it. So all like the mechanics of a board or the ski and what's stuff into it, which is now what I'm doing here. But by the end of that season, I had a chat to Harry. I did like 1 or 2 days of instructing, and then I chatted to Harry at the end of the season, and I was like, "Do you want to? Could I get a job next season?" He went, "Oh, what level are you? Are you qualified?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm like level 2, working on level 3 stuff." And he went, "Fuck off! Why didn't you say so?" And I was like, "We could have used you." I was like, sorry, man." So that's then led me to doing this season. So part-time instructing, full-time working as a supervisor in the rentals and the workshop, in the snowboard workshop. Loving both of it. And yeah, that's sort of my little story. But again, Max, I'm very the same with.
Are you only teaching snowboarding there, or are you teaching skiing as well?
I'm teaching only snowboarding. I have taught skiing once or twice to a couple of mates. I don't, because they've got like a big bunch of ski instructors anyway. There's not much of demand for skiing as there is snowboarding here. Always trying for snowboard instructors, which is kind of really interesting compared to when you go to Europe, where it's like.
Sorry, listener, the connection has dropped out a little. Just while we wait for that to come back, what is
in need?
He's back. Hang on. So we're all back.
You're back.
It takes some time. There's probably like it's about to rain or something here. It's probably my connection.
My
connection is. You were chatting to me about whether you were talking teaching skiing or snowboarding. That's where we dropped out.
Yeah. So teaching basically a little bit of both, mainly snowboarding because that's where the demand is. They always need snowboard instructors. But what I find is when I do teach skiing or snowboarding, a lot of it is very like transferable, which we'll obviously get into touch with later. But by like sort of how the board or ski works, it can be very similar, and you can relate if someone's skied before. You can when they learn how to snowboard here, they're like you can relate the skiing part to snowboarding, which obviously we'll touch upon a lot in a bit. And yeah, it's kind of like very, very similar in both ends that I've sort of found in skiing and snowboarding. But I don't think because Ended Ski is massive. I don't think they know that I've got a qualification in skiing, which is kind of great because like I don't have to teach skiing, but I kind of want to sometimes. And I said, "Oh yeah, I'll teach if you need me to," but there's never been like a demand there, which is a bit weird compared to obviously Europe.
I suppose. Well, I've just been ranting about this on a separate podcast that will probably also be published fairly soon with Gillian, and I'm receiving so many CVs right now And a lot, it just makes me sad, some of it, but some of it really frustrating because I'm typing out the same message. In fact, I'm typing out the same message so much that I've managed to put in like a quick text shortcut, which I've had to because it's just getting a million messages from only snowboard qualified instructors who are writing to me now in September and October. I'm like, it's no good to me. I recruit in April. And the reason I recruit in April is because I start selling ski lessons in August, and it has to be ready. Like, I have to know what my team looks like in order to be able to match lessons to people. But that's just no use to me. I'm not big enough to say that, I need 100 instructors, I don't care who they are. Anyway, but a lot of them are only snowboard qualified. I'm just like, so part of that sort of generic message that I've put is that 95% of lessons sold here in Switzerland are ski. 5% is snowboard. It's not the same elsewhere in the world. Like, there's more snowboarding going on in New Zealand. There's more snowboarding going on in Japan. Maybe in the Germanic parts of Switzerland there's a bit more. But in general, here, people want to ski. Or they take lessons for skiing. And it's very frustrating having to keep saying to these people, look, if you want to work here, you'd be better off being qualified in both, and then you get more opportunities to teach.
Yeah. I agree with that, because when I did your a lot of shadowing and sort of like voluntary work with obviously Max and mainly Max, all these ski school groups that you have coming in are all like really good skiers, like brilliant skiers. That I was like on my snowboard on that one time that Max was like, we'll go with Alec, and he might be on a snowboard, but he'll try and keep up with you. And going through the movements and seeing him like have a task to set, going down like a red run, and they're doing some long turns. Like, these kids can like ski, and I found that they're like really nice kids. They could like bomb it down. I'm like trying to chase up with them. They were surprised that a snowboarder could keep up with them, which was kind of funny. But then when I transitioned to go to teach skiing with Gabby as well, when I got on some pair of skis, it was quite nice to actually keep up with them and not worry about me, falling over on an edge, because I'm now balancing on 2 points of edges instead of one, which is kind of funny. But yeah, no, I agree with that. I think especially if you're in Europe, you just need to learn how to ski if you're a snowboard instructor. And it's the same if you go to Japan or America. It can be, even here, I'd say just have the second discipline, because it's just going to make your life so much easier. And it's good. Makes you a better skier and snowboarder.
And I think also it just makes you more marketable to employers in general, right? Like, when you're coming through the system, like you guys are, or people like you guys are, you've got to put yourself in a position where you're as attractive as possible to potential employers, right? And if you're very one-dimensional, it's very easy to be put, for your resume to be put to the side, compared to somebody who's kind of got, a couple of qualifications and, can do both, can speak a couple of languages and has got the right passport, right? Like, it's much more attractive to someone like me, unless you already know me, right? Like, we tried, Alec, didn't we, to get you onto the team with us, but the work permit situation didn't quite work. But otherwise, you'd be, be on the team by now. You wouldn't be in New Zealand. You'd be gearing up for another massive season. But hopefully that will change in the future. But it is what it is. It's kind of where we are. Whilst I just sort of finished, lecturing all the people out there, which I desperately don't really want to do. Let's talk a little bit about kind of skiing versus snowboarding. Let's talk about from a technical perspective, because if you've done both, then you're more qualified than I am. Like, I've got a fair idea of what it looks like. I think we're working a lot of the time in the same planes of kind of movement. You know, like we have to control our pressure, we have to control our edges, we have to control the amount that we turn, right? Like I'm guessing it's just that we do it either in a sideways on way or a kind of front on way. But what have you found? I guess I don't mind who answers it. I don't know who's done more of what. But if you were to kind of be able to tell me somehow about how one transfers to the other, that would be super interesting, I think.
I think snowboarding is quite interesting. But there is a lot of transferable skills, especially in the last couple of seasons, from kind of working away or doing stuff and, you know, really analysing a lot more of how people ride in both skiing and snowboarding. And you're like spot on, Dave. It is so similar. Like, I'm able to be able to improve someone in skiing, even though my skiing knowledge isn't as good as my snowboarding. I can still do the same, just because like the phases of the turn are completely the same. The way that the turns happen, the way it's skidded, the way it's gripped, or anything kind of like that, you can kind of again very much look at it from working from the ground up. The only difference really is what line you're putting in, if it's 2 or 1, it doesn't really matter. But it is very similar in that sense that you can look at someone and look at how they improve them and work from the ground up and start from their feet, their knees and their hips, and then see how they ride and be like, right, okay, cool. You need to kind of like do this differently or to get this result that you're looking for on this type of terrain. So it is all very similar in that sense. You know, it is easy as like, where the hips are specifically. I would say probably more for snowboarding. One of the big differences I find is in terms of like movement, because we're standing more sideways, we've got a lot more of an idea of that longitudinal movement. So for us, that's, going actually from the hip from one leg to the other, that kind of fore and aft ability is on a different plane than on skiing for sure. And there's the way you can move longitudinally, I think, is a lot more, adaptable and a lot more dynamic on a snowboard, specifically. Just one, because of the kit as well. Our boots are definitely more softer. We can kind of flex into them more. It's a lot easier to kind of maneuver in that sense. But you can kind of find being able to kind of stand on either one foot or the other with some other types of planes of movement work a lot more in our favor in that sense, purely because we need to. When we're leaning backwards and forwards, we don't really have that much balance, especially from like a snowboard standpoint. But I do find it very interesting where I started especially to coach some younger kids last season, just tips on their skiing, and like you could really transfer a lot over from a coaching standpoint. Personally, I felt to skiing, especially from snowboarding, and you felt a lot of the methods that you used from snowboarding worked over to skiing as well, which is really interesting. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the best skier in the world for sure. My technical ability is far like low on the scale of everything else. And even from a coaching standpoint, probably I won't get those little tips and tricks that I could probably give to my students, for example, as you would be able to, because of the experience you've had and the ideas. But you can kind of definitely able to get someone really capable in skiing just from looking at the movements that you've transferred from snowboarding and how their movements are essentially. So it's very good to kind of see that, which is quite nice. And I believe it would be transferable if you're a skier to a snowboard coach as well. So yeah, I can kind of see that.
Do you mind expanding on what you mean by the longitudinal? I'm guessing that is the word in snowboarding for like fore aft, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Your fore aft is done, I'm guessing, in a different way, different plane. If I'm sitting here like with my desperately, you see me, my eyes shut, like desperately trying to imagine it. But I'm guessing it's more of a whole body movement, like fore and aft. But your fore and aft is probably also done, how would you say that? There's a bit of inclination with that as well. I suppose that exists in skiing a little bit too. But that would be, I'm guessing, the main difference between both is either the amount or actually the way that it's done.
Yeah, pretty much.
Compared to skiing.
Like, for skiing, that fore and aft movement, if we talk about pressures in the feet, it's from like the heel through to the toe. With snowboarding, it's definitely more through kind of which foot you're on more than anything, I would say. So you're kind of moving over onto that front foot, whether that's your left or right, or through to the back foot. The way you can achieve that, of course, be completely different. I feel it's a lot more kind of, because snowboarding is a lot more kind of, there's not the boot as well is quite like leeway and giving. Yeah, so you could kind of get that motion and that pressure, whether that's through a bit more of the shoulder or the knee or the hip or wherever, how you want to do it. But you've definitely got a lot more latitude to kind of work with, essentially, to really kind of get low, to really drive and push. And we need to, as snowboarders, because especially when we get some time terrain, some of our edges, especially our heel edge, which is like the big kind of big one in terms of like balance, and to get that edge right, we need to kind of be in a more dynamic posture than actually like some skiers would be, just because we just need, if we wanted to get that performance out of our snowboard, we just need to be in those right positions to get that, essentially. But yeah, you'll find when we're using our feet, especially, it's not just the fore and aft movement, but we'll be working in like different movements. So like twisting our feet in our boots, as you would do in skiing as well. If you wanted to get certain types of like turns, we would also be rolling our feet from like side to side as well. So going from the inside of the foot to the outside, classic foot pedaling, we still use that. And even pedaling from this standpoint as well. Which is quite interesting. So we've got two types of pedaling essentially you can probably do in snowboarding, which is the pedaling from the heel to the toe, or the pedaling from just straight up and down of the movement of your foot. So it's quite an interesting one. I don't think a lot of people know that we've got like two types of pedaling, if you to get really, really technical about it, essentially. But
is that pedaling the vertical pedaling? So I'm aware, like when on the brief occasions that I do snowboard, of the ability to flex the board to get it to do stuff that you want it to do, which I didn't really know actually until about a year ago or 2 years ago when we did a snowboard day. I was like, oh, that makes it way easier. But does that not count? Like if you're pressuring one foot or the other, pedaling vertically on the board, is that not just come under the bucket of like what we would call pressure control?
Yeah. Probably under pressure control against how you use it, really, because you can look at it from a standpoint of essentially the feet individually moving and getting that output, or you could look at it from like a fore and aft element as well, where you're actually putting more of the body and your weight into certain feet as the other one kind of comes up slightly. It's just how you get that movement pattern out. It's kind of very similar to. It is very similar to pressure control for sure. I agree that it's just how you're isolating those movements, I would say, and how you're thinking around it more than anything. You're still going to get the same result regardless, but it's that different type of thinking, really. Especially when you're doing like different associations or going to different countries and learning, it's slightly different for sure, especially when you're starting off.
But you've also got within that, I suppose the main difference though would be in that particular movement. So I'm trying to equate that movement, or you're going sideways, but trying to equate that movement. Let's just say I'm on a pair of skis and I pressure one foot vertically and I release the pressure on the other foot vertically. What happens in that is that my ski essentially will come off the ground, right? Then I'm on one foot if I do it
ridiculous.
Well, yeah, in a large way, but you don't have that luxury because both of your feet are attached to the same device, so it produces a completely different effect.
Yes, it does, actually. And it depends on the foot forward you are as well. Whether, if you're more front heavy on one foot, you're going to get more of a pivoty or brocage turn. And if you're on the back foot a lot more, you're going to get more of a carved kind of like, grippy turn. If you were to really overdo it, then you're just buttering at that point. Like it gets to a point of butters where one side of your board lifts up and the other one kind of sticks to the ground, and you're doing some tricks with that. So that's the kind of big end of it in terms of if you were to really push those movements. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to get the maximum effect out of that, you would be essentially adding pressure with your whole weight on the one foot anyway, and then lifting up slightly with the other. So it's kind of you're using those two types of thinking movement wise in one to really get the best results, really.
Okay.
Yeah, I reckon like think of it like when you're comparing it to skiing with your 4.5 movement, is the whole point is when we lean on our front foot in a snowboard, we want to torsionally flex that board to start the turn. So we're letting that rocker of the nose activate to allow us to initiate a turn or make it easier for us. But when you compare it to skiing, the same effect would be I lean my weight on my front or more into the boots to start the turn to allow the rock of the ski to flex. And as I'm steering throughout the turn, my weight will naturally be on my aft. So at the end of the turn. Yeah. And it's the same sort of snowboarding. So having that same outcome is like what you want on both ends. And it obviously shows a lot more in snowboarding than it does in skiing, but it's there. But then it's also depends on the person. Like I'll talk to my mate Gandhi, who's a really tall person. And he's like, I don't really use forward. Like I don't really lean too much more forward. I'm like really centered on my ski in most ends, and I can steer the ski how I want. Compared to like me or Max, because we're smaller, we find that doing that 4.5 movement works better to achieve that same outcome. But yeah, that's where it's like that's where some difference lie.
The other thing that strikes me about, even a short ski, even if I'm ripping around on a slalom ski, I don't really rip that much these days, it's the wrong word, but if I'm cruising about on a slalom ski which has a 12 meter radius or just under 12.2 or 11 point something, that's still quite a generous radius compared to most snowboards, if I understand it correctly. I don't even know if you guys talk about this kind of stuff, but it strikes me that actually the pressure impulse that must come to you from a snowboard when you're carving it's quite intense because it's very short. I don't know, what's your average sort of radius of a snowboard?
It ranges from public, where they'll do like 9 meter radiuses up to 12, really. Like I'm sure my board, wherever it is probably right around 10 or 11 meter radius. But then that also depends on what camber profile or what sort of profile the snowboard itself got, how much rocker zones has it got. Is it traditional camber, just like a normal ski, where there's not really much rocker there on the tail and tip or on the nose or on or wherever you need it. So it might be really hooky, but then the aggressive, you need to then probably put a lot of energy to bend that camber, compared to something a bit more freestyly where you have a lot more rocker on the tail and tip. So that ease and entry out of turn becomes a lot easier. And when you bend that camber, it's not as aggressive. So it's easier to get a quicker turn out of it because you're not trying to force or bend that board as much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's to me that's super interesting. And the other one that I always found that was Well, I would say it was difficult to manage, but I suppose with work I could probably get it. But it would be the comparison, the very, very different feeling of being on a heel edge versus a toe edge in snowboarding. For me, was like is they feel completely different. I suppose when you're front on as a skier and you've done it for a while, you can kind of make a symmetry. Like I mean, to the naked, to your average person, not many people would see the difference between my left and right turn, but I could feel it. But it's not that visible. And I suppose after years and years of kind of skiing and accumulation of injuries and whatnot, like you're going to have differences in the way that your body moves left and right. But you are at least a little bit more front on, whereas this huge difference when you're on a sort of a sideways plane is that I never have felt that I can do the same thing going. I can't manage the pressure as well on a heel edge as I can really lean into a toe edge, because I guess that all your joints are doing what they're sort of designed to do.
Yeah,
if
so
that makes sense. Like when you lean into a toe edge and you manage to hook it up, and you kind of really lean into you flex your ankle into the front of your boot, and everything's kind of loose. It's very easy to manage the pressure on a toe edge turn, but on a heel edge turn, it strikes me as like, well, my feeling is that you kind of almost just waiting for it to fall away, because you're not, you're like, this is really sketchy, I'm not sure if it's going to hold. But it feels different. The radius feels different. Everything about it is different compared to the other side. And that's not something that we have necessarily in skiing at all.
It's definitely a thing we have to deal with as snowboarders all the time. Like, you are so right there. Like, I don't think, like, my toe side turn and my heel side turn are always going to be symmetrical. I can try and get it there as close as I can, but I know, like, just as a normal thing, our heel sides are always going to be longer than our toe side turns, because we're having to put more work in. We're a lot more restricted with our movements. It's a lot to work with. We can get there as close as possible with equipment and how we ride on the snowboard, whether that's using like an asymmetrical snowboard where the side cuts are slightly different. So like our heel side cut is slightly tighter than our toe side cut. So that can really help kind of get the snowboard around where we want it to, which is quite cool. You can do change our stance angles as well. So you could probably get, we call it posi stance, which is essentially both your feet are in the direction of travel instead of just kind of duck-footed, and that can allow you to kind of open up a bit more and really drive that heel side edge to really grip through it and make it a lot easier. It's the types of movement as well. When you start up in snowboarding, you're very kind of like in that rigid state, so you're not really rotationally moving along with your hips or anything like that. So you find it's going to be hit harder with that. But the moment you start kind of opening up a bit on that heel side turn, and really kind of adding some rotational movement in, it's a lot easier to kind of manage those forces and to manage that turn. But you are so right in that sense, and I don't think we'll ever get to that point where both turns are exactly the same and always symmetrical. I think it's just something you just know as a snowboarder and having to deal with more than anything. I'd say one of the hardest things is definitely being able to like especially in like tougher conditions, is to move your kind of center of mass over the board, especially from like heel to toe. And if you're trying to like really, get that consistency to work and to really focus and be really anal about those turns, it can be difficult to try and find where that cross point is. Usually we're coming a lot more up the hill to really get to set that edge, to really get that heel side turn or that toe side turn to really get what we need to. There's a lot more work involved for sure.
It's an interesting. I hadn't understood that there might be boards that have different side cuts for heel side. That's really kind of makes sense now, like why you would do that, because you kind of, I don't know, just feel like you need a helping hand. To me, that hillside turn, everything you're doing is you're kind of fighting all of the forces, aren't you? You know, you're trying to lift you're lifting your toes up against what they really want to do. Everything wants to send you down the hill, right? And yeah, you're really fighting on that side as opposed to on the toe side, which I'm guessing you just feel like you can lean into it. I mean, it's a really nice feeling. It's one of the nicest feelings in snow sports, to be fair. I really love that. I would put that up there with like when you really can engage and carve out a really nice toe side turn and you've got your balance all set. Like it's the closest thing I could feel. I don't surf, but I could imagine that's the closest thing that it feels like to surfing. And for me, in terms of a pleasurable like feeling, it's as close as I get to telemark. Like that would be for me.
Yeah,
no, a decently done telemark turn.
Yeah, I find it quite interesting that it's a personal thing. I think like I never really have. Oh, it's set as heel side turns harder than toe side turn. I think for me personally, that's the case. You know, I find it really easier on my toe side turn. I'm stronger on my toe side turn. I really like using ankle flex, so I have softer boots, which really help drive that my kind of weight down into the boot a lot more. So I find myself a lot more stable on my toe side. But then you definitely find a load of instructors and a load of people actually find their heel side easier. And from me personally, I'm like, from a balance standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, you know, it's a bit different. But then there are people that are just like, hey, I love heel side. I find it so much easier to work on than my toe side. And you kind of ask those questions of why and like, how's that the case? And then they kind of start getting into like, oh, maybe it's like equipment, you know, their toe side turns aren't as good because they've got stiffer boots or something and they don't like to flex as much through their ankle or kind of it can be harder to bring the hip actually over the toe, which can be a big thing. You know, you'll find a lot of people snowboarding, especially on their toe side, their butt's still sticking out when those hips should come over the toe side.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier on the heel edge for those hips to come over on that heel edge because you're already in that natural sitting position that it's going to be easier to kind of get there already. Whereas in toe side, there's actually probably more commitment you're going to have to put in because you're essentially, those hips are putting right through, you know, the big thing we always think about when we're on our toe side edge, when you're starting up, we always think like, hey, you know, have a wee over a cliff or something, you know, really get those hips over those toes. And it can be hard for a lot of people to kind of get it, especially for women, you know, really those hips coming over, just from like a biomechanics standpoint. Yeah. So that's kind of like one of the big differences as well I found, that you find a lot of people actually prefer their heel side edge from a psychological standpoint as well. It's because they can look down the hill. Like you can't do that on a toe side edge really. If you're really coming and finishing off that end of that turn, you're looking up the hill at the end of the day, you know, or going across the slope. So you're not really aware what's going on. So you're like, it is more of both of those aspects, I think, are the big things and why people probably also prefer heel edge over toe side. Yeah, definitely. I think that's quite a big one.
Yeah, you're right. Like equipment can be like a big thing massively because especially when you teach like complete beginners, sometimes they'll get given, you know this, Dave, like they'll get given the most crappiest equipment from a ski hire that will have ancient old equipment and it's just not going to help them. Like, for example, like starting off with boots, when you've got boots that are like ancient, they're just going to fold, especially on their toe edge. So they're not going to have any support. So it's all the ratchets and the binding that's going to do the work. And again, you see it a lot in kids' boots where they just, because there's no support there, they just fold, and trying to teach them to do a toe edge just becomes near impossible because they can't, even if they get the correct posture and trying to get their weight over, it becomes just, they still can't get the board to do what they need to. Like same with you're in a ski boot and the ski boot's terrible, it's not getting this person into a proper good ski position to help them be supportive, then they're just constantly trying to find balance, and then they're trying to work their body a lot harder to get the ski to work a lot harder. And it's the same sort of thing in snowboarding, where if the equipment isn't good from like day one, you know they're going to have a harder time on their toe edge. Whilst heel edge, you've kind of got the work of the high back to do that, so they can just lean into high back. That's where the support lies, and it comes a lot easier, especially for kids, because especially when they're growing up, their weight's all up in their head, and it gets, as they develop, it gets lower and lower and lower into their hips. So them trying to do their toe edge just becomes just immensely harder because of that.
That is super interesting. So I didn't really realise that there was like an inbuilt bit of stiffness into snowboard boots. I just assumed they were all the same. So I've learned something today already. But the inverse is actually, so when you've got old ski boots, what they do is they go hard. It's just the opposite. So you've got these kids trying to learn how to ski on something that they cannot flex, and then they get trapped in a snowplow because you've got this boot just holding them like rigid, you know, straight up. And we need, as you guys do, we need some ankle flex, but ours needs to be done in a way where it's kind of like supportive and progressive. Similar to, sounds like what you're saying, actually. It needs to be supportive, but it needs to be present. Like, it's not like walking around in a pair of slippers, especially on the toe side, right? Yeah, I agree with you. On the heel side, you're supported by it. You can get away with it, right? Because the back of the thing is there. But I guess if you're just going through the front of the boot, you have no fine motor control over what you're doing with the toe side edge. Is that what it is?
Yeah. You've got no support there. So when they get into turning, if they're getting to that level and they're rolling their feet and rolling their whole body over to their toe edge, as that happens, if it's the boot's not supportive, they can try and get away with it by going on their tiptoes or really trying to get their weight over. And by then, because that boot's not supportive and it takes a lot of time for it to even work because it's squashed enough, it means that they're not gripping the edge as early, which means the turn itself and the outcome's going to be harder. So the board might be putting tons down the hill, making them a bit more scared, and rolling onto the new edge becomes so much harder because it's just like that edge just like slow down, it's not getting there, and it's like until like the last minute. Whilst with the heel edge, when they roll onto the heel edge, comes a little bit easier because they can just go bang on the heel edge and the board works on how they actually want it to work.
It's interesting.
So, yeah.
So we're all fighting with the same problems, but just with slightly different... excuse me.
You, Dave.
Yeah, I've got to unmute myself. So we're all fighting with the same problems, essentially, but just with slightly different variations of why that makes a difference.